All right, guys, welcome. We are going to cover today the basics of Ableton Live. So, what is Ableton Live? Ableton Live is a software or a DAW, or digital audio workstation, in which you can edit audio, you can produce music. The possibilities are endless. You don't have to be a producer to use this. What I like most about Ableton is that it's super fast to work with, and you can get really, really creative results fast. So here we go. Okay, so here we are in our main window of Ableton. Ableton has two different views. If you press the tab key, you're able to switch in between both of the different transports, okay? On the left-hand side, you have all your sounds, instruments, audio effects. All this stuff right here comes with Ableton. There's a ton of really good stuff. And then Max for Live we'll cover in another video, but really powerful program where you can make your own effects and stuff. Down here, places, different packs that you can download. Your user library, which has all your different presets and stuff that I'll show you guys how to do that later. Your current project, whatever you're working on. All these other ones, these are just folders that I added right here. Okay, and simply just to add a folder, you just add folder, go search for whatever it is, and then click open, and it'll add it right up. Okay, cool. If we go up here, we have all our file menus. This is something that's really, really helpful for when you're sharing projects, which is collect and save. What it basically does is it saves all your work within the project. So if you're missing some files and you send it to somebody else, it's not going to be missing those files. So it basically puts everything all in the folder of the project. Okay. Edit. This is pretty self-explanatory. We'll go to create. This is if you want to insert audio tracks, MIDI tracks. I'll show you guys the shortcuts for this. View. So in this menu, you can actually, if you have two windows or two monitors, you're able to set it up in a way that in one screen you have this, and then on the other screen you have this. So you're able to have an arrangement window where you have all your audio files, and then the other one is like your mix window. Okay, moving on. What else? This is the same thing that I was saying with the tab. You can do between arrangement and session view. If you don't have an external keyboard, this is a really important shortcut. It's M. So basically it turns your keyboard into a MIDI keyboard, which is pretty cool. All right. Cool. So we'll start here in the transport, press tab. So in order to add or start any type of audio track, you can either right click, insert audio track. That's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it, it's in Mac is Command T, and in Windows I believe is Control T. So if you press Command T, boom, you're able to add a new audio file. Now there's another type of file or of track that's called a MIDI track. So same deal, you can do it right click, or if you want to add a new MIDI track, Shift, Command, and T, and that adds a new MIDI track. Now there's a third type of track, which is a return track, and these are where you're gonna set up all your effects. I will explain that in another tutorial, but for the sake of simplicity, these are your return tracks where you can put effects and that sort of stuff. So you can either go here and insert a return track, or you can also do it with Command Option T, and it adds it. In Windows, I think it's Control Alt T. So All right, so those are the type of different tracks that we can create. Now, let's delete this right here. Cool. In each of these channels, let's create a new audio track. There are different things that you can do. So right down here you have volume. You can turn the track on and off by just clicking here. I believe if you do, oh, never mind. So you can turn this on and off. You can solo in place. So let's say I put like a vocal in here.
All I need.
I can solo it.
All I need.
There we go. If I added something else, for example, and this is a really cool trick, if you have any type of audio and you drag it in here, it'll automatically open up a track for you. But anyway, going back to solo. So if you have two different things playing, for example, let's say playing, you can solo things by just pressing the S button, which is pretty cool. So if you're EQing something or you just want to see the difference between two tracks. This is the record button. So in order to be able to record in a track, you'll have to arm it. So what arming means is you're gonna have to click the record button. Oops, never mind. Okay. So then we have here the arm button. This is for recording MIDI, or if you have an external microphone or an external instrument, you will just arm it, and then once you press record, it's gonna start recording immediately. So like if I go to this view and I press record, I'm gonna touch my MIDI keyboard, and it's gonna start recording the MIDI right here. Okay, cool. So press tab again to go back to the transport. So there is a difference between these two views, and the difference is that this view operates on clips versus this one, which operates on a linear basis. So this one's very loop based. This is more of a linear base where you place things into different sections. Cool. If you want to record from this view, you just press record. Same deal. It's gonna record your MIDI. And now if I double click this, you'll see that I recorded the MIDI in here. Cool. Let's go over to the the pan. So here you can pan left or right. Here you can see the peak volume of something. So let's, for example, put a loop. Just to set a drum loop. So if you look as I play this, that's really fast. You'll see a peak volume right here. Cool. Now, the other thing is sends. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that you have sends right here. So I have already these preset, but you can set up to whatever you want to, and I'll explain that later. So for example, I have a reverb here, just any reverb. You can use the stock one from Ableton, that works too. So let me change the BPM here. Okay, so this is where you change the BPM. So I have this loop right here that is going really fast. Oh, okay. Here we go. So I have this loop, and so what the sends are for is basically you're gonna mix a part of this into the loop. So let's say I have that reverb right here. Now if I play the loop, click it, and I go to B. You can hear the reverb taking effect. So that's what these sends are for. I also have a delay right here, and I have a room reverb on here. And like I said, these could be anything that you want it to be. It can be a delay, it can be a compressor, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Next thing, this is where the routing of the audio goes to. So you can basically route the audio of this to any other channel or to the master, which is really cool when you're creating groups, or if you want to group things together later on. So basically, this is where you route the audio to. If you do use the sends only, it's only going to send out the signal without any audio. There's a really cool use for that, but I will cover that in a later video where we talk about sidechain compression and using any other audio sources to control the dynamics of another sound. So next, monitor. So in case you have something coming in from the outside, like a microphone or something like that, you can just monitor it here and just click in, choose your where the audio is coming from, and it'll automatically come in here. Audio from, if, like I said, this is the audio is coming from another source, you can select it here, or you can have something or MIDI from another place come in here and control the signal. Okay, so that's the track itself, the transport controls. If you look over here on the right hand side, this is going to be related to these parts right here. So if you press IO, this will come and go, which is basically means input and output. Sends. So this is what we talked about, that you can route to your reverbs or delays or whatever else. So these are your sends. Returns. So you can make them appear or disappear. Same deal here. The only difference is you can make the sends disappear here. Here you can't make the sends disappear. This is basically all the levels or master chat or metering per se. This is what they call metering. Then we have the track delay. This is really interesting if you want to put your own track delay on things. So let's say you recorded a vocal and it's off by a few milliseconds to the track that you're recording it to, then you're able to compensate for that here, which is, it's really cool also to add groove to things. So all right, what else in the transport? Oh, this is another really cool thing. When you switch between the views, if you're only on this view right here, on the transfer view, if you switch over, you'll see that everything's grayed out, and basically that just means you're working on this view versus this view. So if you want to get out of the transfer view, you just go ahead and go to session view, and voila, you're ready to rock on this side. Okay. You can also, so as you're creating tracks, you can also color them. So if you want to color your tracks, just right click on the track, pick the color that you want. This is another really cool thing. When you add clips to, let's say this one. So let's say I change the color to orange. If I wanted to color this right here orange, all I would have to do is right click and then assign track color to clips, and boom, you're ready to roll. A few of the different things that you can do here when you right click, obviously you can cut, copy, duplicate, delete. All the commands are right here. These are pretty easy to learn, and we use them a lot, with like word processors and stuff when you're copying, pasting, that sort of stuff. You can also rename tracks, which is cool if you want to put like, MIDI right here. Boom. Okay. What else? Freeze track. This is really cool when you want to save CPU space. So let's say you have something like this, this drum loop right here. Right. So unwarp this. All right. So I'm gonna select the section. If you go, okay, warp. Okay, here we go. So I think, let me try this again. Import. Cool. All right. So we got this right here. Okay, here we go. Cool. So we have this loop right here. Let's say I wanted to make this loop 2 bars long, and I wanted to do something that's called consolidate. So here we go. You have the loop right here. Cool. So now, in order to freeze this track, you would just go to freeze track. And so what that basically does, it turns it to audio. This is already in audio form, but this is just to show you the example of, let's say you had something in MIDI. I don't know. Let's add let's do like a grand piano, which is part of the Ableton packs. Boom, we got that grand piano right there. Cool. Give it a little volume. Cool. So let's say I'm gonna record something right here. Cool. So we got that, right? Let me unfreeze this track. So now that I have this MIDI, this is where the really cool part of freeze is. So if you freeze a track, it automatically turns it into audio. So what happens now is it bounces it to audio, and then all you have to do is click flatten, and it turns it into audio. Boom. Really cool, right? What other things are right here? Same deal that we talked about earlier. You can insert audio MIDI tracks, return tracks. Group tracks. What does group track means? So let's say you have a bunch of audio tracks right here that you want to group together. For example, drums are a very common theme for this. Or if you want to treat give sound treatment to something together, all you have to do is you click one, press shift, click the last one that you want to select, and then you go to group tracks, or you can press Command G or Control G, and boom, you're grouped. And then you can also rename the group. So if you want to put like drum bus, you can do that, or you can also name it like vocal bus. I've seen some people do the underscore so you know it's a bus, and you can call it vocal bus. And if you're wondering about what a bus is, it's just basically a way to identify something where you route a multiple channels of something. So that's really what a bus means. So you have like the master bus, which is the master right down here. And so yeah, you can group them and make them into any type of bus that you want. So now all these, as you can see, once you group them, all the routing goes to the vocal bus, and then the vocal bus goes to the master. So cool. What else can I show you guys here? We'll cover a little bit of the transport up here. You can link it to to an outside source. You don't really need to worry about that. Also, you can link it to an external source. This is something called a click track, and you can basically tap, or I should say, this is your BPM. So you can actually tap your BPM in here, just with your mouse. You can tap it right here. Boom. This is something that helps you move your it moves your grid off a little bit, or your BPM per se. It kind of throws it off being so quantized. You can choose your measure. So if you want to do like a 3/4 measure or a 2/4, you can pick whatever you want. And you have your click track, and you can actually feel the change in right here. Here you go. If you want to do 2/4, if you want to do 1/4, if you want to do 5/4, if you want to do 8/4, whatever you want to do, you can pick, and the click track will help you keep track of that. You can pick for how many bars it goes up to. This is this is something that's really cool that you'll see that you're able to use inside of your tracks. So let's just go to 1 bar. This is just to choose how many bars the click track goes to. So here, talking about this specific area right here, you also have that when you click here, when you right click. So what does this mean? It means that you can separate your arrangement view into different types of bars depending on what you're doing. So a bar basically just means 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a bar. So if you want to do an 8-bar section, it'll automatically give you a grid of an 8-bar section, 4 bars, 2 bars. A really cool shortcut for this is if you press Command 2, it starts to split. And then if you press Command 1, it splits the opposite way. So Command 2, the grid starts to get bigger, and then once you press Command 1, then it goes quite the opposite way. If you want to turn it into triplets, you can press Command 3, and then you get into the triplet mode. Click it again, click Command 3, and it gets out of triplet mode. You can also access it here. Triplet grid right here. You can also have adaptive grid. If you want the widest, you want wide, you want medium, you want narrow, narrowest. Which is, I mean, it's basically all this, but it just gives you an easier selection. You can also come up here to this little gray area and just click, and if you scroll up or down, it actually zooms in and out. Another cool thing, once you see this little icon, if you keep going down, this is so you can listen from a specific place. Okay. You can also right click and it'll add a locator. So what would that be for? Let's say you're saying like, you know, this is where your hi-hat comes in. Hi-hat, boom. So now your hi-hat's going to come in that place. And you can move these around wherever you'd like, and you can rename them if you need to. Rename or edit info text. Well, the info text is not here, but anyway. So you can rename them here if you want to, like vocal comes in here, or you can put drop, whatever. You can set the song to start time to start there. It's pretty cool. If you want to delete it, just delete it. What else do we got? Okay, so we kind of covered this area right here, all of this. Now we come down to this right here. So what this is basically where all the effects for each individual channel goes. So once you've created a track, for example, I already have my default, but let's say you create a brand new track and you got nothing. I'm gonna delete all these. Boom. So you got nothing, right? So let's say I have let me see, let me get a vocal right here. Any type of vocal, I'm just, okay, fine, we have this. Something that says, hey, 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 hey. Okay, here we go. So we have this. Hey, hey, hey. Cool. So I have my vocal track. So I'm gonna go up here because this created a new one. Okay, so I have my brand new track right here. Cool. So now what I'm gonna do is add an effect. So where are all the effects? If you go right here to effects, we have a bunch of different things that you can use. So let's say, for example, I wanted to put an EQ. You just put channel EQ on here. Boom, you're ready to go. This is new on the latest Ableton versions. This is a 3-band EQ, but my favorite one, it's called an EQ8. So the EQ8 goes down here. You just go ahead, drag and drop. It's got a bunch of different bands that you can use. I will go more in depth in another tutorial about frequency response and what the different areas of the frequency spectrum are. But for the sake of simplicity, that's how you drop in effects. You can drop like an erosion, or if you wanted to EQ some stuff out. Boom. Boost. That's how you put them in there. Okay, cool. And you can do this with anything. So, this is just an audio track, but let's say I had a MIDI track. Same deal like I did with the piano. Add a new MIDI track, and then I'm gonna go to my MIDI effects or instruments. And then I can choose anything like an operator, which super simple synth. These are all the presets, but I can just go up here and click that, and now I have my operator. Pretty cool, right? If I wanted to add a MIDI effect, let's say to that operator, I can add a MIDI effect like an arpeggiator or something like that, right? Which is pretty cool, right? So keep in mind that there is a difference between MIDI and audio tracks. So in MIDI tracks, you can only put MIDI. So anything that is an instrument or some type of virtual instruments, that's all MIDI. And then audio tracks, obviously you can put all audio tracks. If you do try to put any type of audio track into a MIDI track, this is what's going to happen. So let's say I want to add a new MIDI track. If I try to put it here, it's going to tell me, do you want to convert audio to MIDI? So these are 3 different, I would say, modes that Ableton has. So you can either do harmony, melody, and drums. So depending on what you're converting to MIDI, let's say if it's a piano or something like that, you want the full spectrum of the harmony. Melody, if it's just something that's let's say single noted, a guitar or something like that, you can use melody, it's more effective. And then drums, very self-explanatory. So for something like this, I would probably use melody. And then boom, you got this. It literally renders something for you. The only thing is, so once you put something in here, it's going to generate a sampler, but it doesn't have anything to sample. So what's basically it's looking for is looking for some type of source. So what we can do if we want to put that to MIDI is just put it right here, and boom, there you go. We'll try to do something. But anyway, that's what happens when you put an audio track into a MIDI. We can try some of the other ones. Like if I go to harmony, it's converting the vocal, and then now it converts it. to nothing. So sometimes it's really crappy like that. We can try with something more, let's say like a guitar. Let's see. Maybe something like this. Let's try that. Oh, let's do melody. So now you see that it converts it into a melody. So, and now we can, we can try to see if we can put a piano in here. So if we put like, let's say a piano instrument or an operator, like we just did, then now we can use the melody we grabbed from this guitar to make a brand new song. Pretty cool, right? Which is dope. There you go. Got a song right there. Boom, boom. Cool. All right. So let's delete all this. What's another thing? You can also make a default template. So once you got all this set up, explore all the different things that Ableton has. There's so many of them, so many. You can set up your own default template. So if you go to preferences, and so whatever you have here set up, whether you have 5 channels or 7 channels, you can go to file and folder, and then go to save current set as default. So once you hit save, however you have this set up, next time you open it, it's going to show up the same way, which is pretty awesome. And while we're here, in the preferences menu, you can check all these different things of like, don't show again warnings, follow behavior. I don't know what all this is, actually. This is new with 10.1. You can auto-assign track colors, which is pretty cool. Then the theme has a bunch of different themes. You can choose dark, mid, dark, live 9, mid, dark, default. It's pretty cool. Brightness, and then color intensity, however you want. This is actually really good for your eyes at night. The red is actually really soothing for the eyes, just so you know. Okay, audio. This comes pretty standard with all computers, a core audio or some type of audio processor. Your input device, where your audio is coming from, your audio output. So I use a Scarlett Solo USB, and you have all these different output devices here if you need to. Your sample rate, I would suggest, the standard used to be 44/100, but most people use 48K now. The buffer size, this is latency. So what that means is the amount of time it takes for, let's say, my MIDI note to be identified by the program or the computer. So, if I hit a C somewhere, then if the lower the buffer size, I believe, the faster it is. Let's double check that. Yes. And then it tells you the milliseconds on here, and you can have, driver error compensation. So let's say if you're hitting, if you can see up here, you're hitting the MIDI note and it's coming in a little late, you can compensate here. You can do a test tone if you're trying to tune something like that. All right. This is all your MIDI. So your control surfaces, your input, your output. I do value scaling. Some people use pickup. This is all your settings for your tracking, your syncing, and your remote if you want to use it as a remote. We already went through this. Oh, the cache. The higher the better. I like to use 1.5 gigs or 1 gig. That's plenty. And you can browse to, if you want to push your cache somewhere else, then do that. Library, you can go to your user library. It's usually right here in your, let's say your user, whatever your name is, music, Ableton user library. And then this is the installation folder for packs if you ever download any factory packs or anything like that. Plugins. So plugin sources, if you need to rescan your plugins because you got a new plugin, I will be covering plugins another time, but if you got new plugins, you can rescan. Audio units, this is a type of plugin. And then you have VST2, which is the older version now, which it was VST, I think, 2.4. And then now we have VS3, which is a brand new type of VST with some more capabilities and stuff. I have to research that because I'm not quite sure. Then you can pick your folder. This is very important that you have your VSTs in the correct folder, because if you don't have your plugins in a dedicated folder, it can really throw off Ableton, and then you might have plugins all over the place. So make sure you pick a folder. If you have to make one, and put them there. You can have multiple plugin windows. That's completely up to you. You can auto hide the windows, open plugin windows. That's up to you. Warp, record, and launch. This is for a really cool feature that actually I love about Ableton, and I haven't seen in any other DAW, which is warping, and that's a really cool thing to use, which basically takes anything that you throw in that and it quantizes it to the BPM that's there. So you can choose your preference, play around with this. I like to keep it at wave 24 bit. You can do a count in if you want for recording of like 1 bar, so it'll go and then record. Clip update rate 1 bar, okay. This is for your warping. Like I said, I actually like to use Complex or Complex Pro for most things. Right here, if you go to auto, it'll auto warp your samples when you drop them in, which was what I was saying, which is super cool. Launch. I'm not sure about this. I've never messed with this, so. And you can tap your tempo in like we did right here. Licenses. This is, pretty standard stuff.